Hey everybody, it's your friend Jason Pound here answering the top questions asked by home buyers and home sellers in today's Oklahoma real estate market. Question we're tackling today: my home's in a flood zone. Does that negatively impact the value of my home? Short answer, yes, about 5 to 15%. However, as usual, let me over-explain. The most important part of your flood insurance, and know that if you're in a flood zone, you're going to want to have flood insurance, or you're going to be required to have flood insurance. What goes into the calculation of the insurance premium is what is the frequency and what is the severity of the floods. The further in the past the flood was, the less it's going to cost you. The more recent the flood was, the more it's going to cost you. The worse the flood was versus the less severity of the flood, those are going to impact your insurance premiums as well. Something else that goes into this flood history is what has the city, the county, the state, local municipalities, the homeowner, what has been done to deal with this flood issue, if anything. Those all go into the calculation. The second thing you need to realize is that the insurance costs are not as expensive as most people think they are. Most home buyers, as soon as they hear flood insurance, they're thinking $8,000 to $10,000 a year for some reason. I don't understand why. It is not that expensive. Typical flood insurance in Oklahoma ranges from $700 to $2,000 a year. The reason this is such a big deal is most of the people that are using government-backed programs, because they have smaller down payments, which means they have smaller savings accounts, which means they have less funds for closing costs, cannot afford the additional out-of-pocket closing costs that are needed to close the deal. Because they're using a government-backed loan, they often are forced to have an escrow account where they pay their taxes and their insurance and their mortgage payment all to the mortgage company, and the mortgage company makes the tax and insurance payments for them. If you're at a $2,000 annual insurance premium, to set up an escrow account, you have to pay $2,000 up front plus 3 months, which is around $500. So being in a flood zone increased your closing costs by $2,500. Now throw on top of that normal insurance, normal taxes, and you can see where quickly these numbers spiral out of control for your typical buyer. The third thing to realize is that while being in a flood zone impacts your market value, it does not necessarily impact your appraisal value. What actually happens is the buyer pool is shrunk, because there are buyers, the moment they hear you're in a flood zone, they don't even want to engage with the property anymore, and they opt out completely. There are some of our buyers that have stipulations where if the property's in a flood zone, they won't even go look at the property. And because of that, homes that tend to be in flood zones tend to sell at lower prices. And the reason they're selling at lower prices is they don't have as many buyers. So appraisers have picked up on the fact that if a home is in a flood zone, they need to look at other homes within that same flood zone and try to find comparables. And if they can't find comparables in that particular area, they may go outside of the area to look at a similar flood zone and see how those homes have been impacted versus the surrounding properties that are not in the flood zone. So it does not have a direct correlation. It has an indirect correlation that shows up because of market pressure. So in short, if you see that homes in your neck of the woods are selling for $200 a square foot, but you're in a flood zone, don't automatically assume that your home is worth the $200 a square foot. You need to get a professional involved, have them dig into the data and get you more information so that you are not disappointed when you go on the market. As a buyer, the moment you see that a property's in a flood zone, you need to have your realtor start looking at comparables in flood zones, not at comparable properties outside of the flood zone. You're comparing not apples to apples, you're actually probably comparing apples to pecans at that point. And that is not a great way to make a home purchasing decision. You want to have accurate data that is in your calculus so you can make good decisions. My name is Jason Pound with Jericho Pound Realty Group. We service the entire Oklahoma City metro area with hyper-local expertise in South Oklahoma City, Moore, and Norman. If we can ever be of service, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here to serve. In the meantime, peace out, have a great life, and I'm gonna get back to work.